Welcome to the Public Technology Institute's Industry Insider Webinar Series, a free monthly webinar series featuring private sector industry experts giving you insights into the topics and trends that they see impacting public sector IT. PTI is the only national organization dedicated exclusively to supporting local government technology through consulting, education, and a peer-connected community. We help you lead smarter, grow faster, and stay ahead of what's next. In this month's episode, From AI Policy to AI Impact, Corry Flatt, co-founder and CEO of GovAI, will take you through a practical roadmap from establishing AI guidelines to maximizing AI impact. Here to kick off the webinar is PTI's Director of Education, Darryl Polk.
Welcome to a special episode in our education series here at Public Technology Institute on AI in government. And as we all know right now, AI is front and center for industries and businesses across the spectrum, but especially in local government. And today we have a very special episode and a very special guest, one of our business partners, GovAI. They are one of the companies at the forefront for implementation for AI in government and really finding value in that space. And so today I want to introduce you to Corry Flatt. He's with GovAI, and he's going to walk you through a lot of the value propositions and the successes and the things that aren't quite successful yet, but where really value is being found in this for local government. So Corry, welcome. Thank you so much for being here and for being able to provide this information for our members.
Darryl, thanks so much for having me. Really excited to take your members through this content. It's really timely and important. Okay, so welcome everybody. My name's Corry Flatt. I am one of the co-founders of GovAI and the CEO, and really excited to take you through the agenda today. So we're going to start relatively high level. Why are we talking about AI in local government or in public sector more broadly? Of course, it's a hot topic, but why do we want to zero in on this particular question of how to move from policy to impact today? And from that, we're going to do a quick dive through the policy landscape. So we're going to look at what federal policy, state policy, local policy, what's emerging around policy, and what kind of clues are in that help us move from kind of the basics, the guardrails, into something that's actually going to have an impact. And then we're going to turn to exactly that question. How do we get maximal impact from AI? And we're going to talk about things like platforming and partnership through that. And we're going to end with a kind of conclusion and overall view of how all of these elements work together, the 3 Ps, which is policy, platform, and partnership. And we'll have some time for Q&A at the end and discussion too. So with that, I'll give a little bit of background on GovAI, just so you know where our data is coming from, where our perspectives are coming from. We launched an AI platform for public sector and government back in September of 2023. And so we've really had this front row seat to how agencies are adopting the technology, what they're using it for, how they're using it, what works, what doesn't work. And so you can see our prompt volume chart on the right there. You can see that it's growing exponential, right? It's doubling about every 60 days. And so from that, we are in possession of a lot of anonymous or anonymized and aggregated data. So a lot of the actual charts and guidance around what works and what doesn't work is coming from the largest set of actual government AI data in North America, which is our particular data set. And so as we think about things like policy and impact, we have a lot of like very salient examples that we can draw. We're going to be using clients as examples. The clients are the green dots on our map there. And we have a free tier as well, so we have lots of data and lots of usage from other agencies too, but we're going to zero in on particular clients and tell their stories in particular areas as we go today. So this is where we're coming from. So with that, let's just dive right in. Why is moving from AI policy to AI impact a super important thing for you to be focused on right now? And so you don't need me to tell you this, but AI is dramatically changing the way that we work in all sectors. People know that, but I'm not sure people appreciate how quickly this is actually happening. So if you think about such important work technologies as electricity or the internet or radio or cell phone, and you plot their trajectories, as you see on the chart, versus artificial intelligence's trajectory, it really puts into perspective just how rapidly this technology is being adopted. And so, people can be forgiven for thinking, oh, AI is a little bit overhyped, or why are we just always talking about AI and it has all these promises and it's, look, everybody just relax a little bit. But what the data is actually showing us is that this is the most adopted, fastest adopted work technology of all time. And it's not just that it's happening quickly, but if you notice, and this may seem like minutia, but follow me here, the slope of the line is actually inflecting even further vertical as folks are getting more and more value from artificial intelligence. And this is in the span of a few years. So the way we're changing, the way we work is changing very quickly, and especially among college grads and kind of knowledge workers, which the vast majority of employees at a public sector agency will fall into this bucket. And so we can see that it's not just that, hey, they tried it, a high percentage of people have tried it, it's becoming routine as well. So college grads, we can see that when you think about several times a week to once a day to almost constantly, and you look at the average American college grad, you can see that this is 75% of them are at least using it several times a week, and over 50% are using it about once a day or more. And why are they using it? Productivity, right? It makes me more efficient. It expands what I can do. And I kind of think about this as, it gives me superpowers in a way, right? I gain almost like an organ that I can use. And so 64% of people who are using AI say that this is why they're using it. And so we may think that government work is somehow different, or public sector work is immune to some of these effects. But the data here is very, very clear as well. It's not immune. We're seeing this rapid change in government work, public sector work too, but it's a bit more chaotic, and the data will unpack this a little bit. So first of all, about 43% of US public sector employees are using AI at least a few times a week, and that's more than double Q2 2 years ago. So it's growing really rapidly. It's almost half. Is it growing as quickly as private sector? Maybe not. But part of that is how it's growing. Check this out. 50% of the folks in public sector using AI are using their personal or non-government or non-organization approved AI at work. So folks are starting to use it rapidly, but they're reaching for personal tools. We call this shadow AI or shadow IT. And furthermore, there's confusion, right? So there's a tool confusion, and there's this blend of personal tools versus the tools maybe they're supposed to be using or they're waiting for their organization to choose. But they also have a lack of clarity. So only 37% of public sector employees say that their organization has a clear AI strategy, which is markedly different than, at least in private sector, the majority will say that they have, clarity, that their organization has a clear policy. So the picture is this technology's come in, changing the way we work. It's changing the way government works, but there's a lot of lack of clarity in terms of how we're using it and exactly what this is going to look like. But it's worth pausing for a second and saying, well, why are government employees reaching for this technology with all the kind of narrative around risk and all the uncertainty? They're still reaching for it. A lot, increasingly. And so it comes back to government actually has, and public sector more broadly, has a structural need for AI. Or put another way, AI is hitting at the exact right time as all of these headwinds kind of converge on government that make it harder. And so the best way to think about this, really briefly here, folks, the capability of your organization, of a public sector organization, government organization, is the bottom red line, right? And you can grow, But you have budget pressures, you have complexities growing, you may have a burnout or morale problem in your staff, you may have leadership turnover, but the demands are growing far more rapidly and with an inflection upwards. Expectations from residents or citizens, your stakeholder groups, your funding organizations have harder and harder demands. And so this gap becomes a huge problem as these lines diverge. And so why government staff and public sector employees are reaching for AI is essentially they're trying to find ways of keeping up, right? Of being more efficient, gaining the superpower so that they can kind of keep up with those demands. And so when your organization deploys AI properly and effectively, safely, all the stuff we're going to talk about next, what happens is you're able to keep your capability, you as an individual worker, as an individual leader, but your organization as a whole can stay abreast and continue through performing against those growing demands. So this is why it's happening, folks. This is what's happening today. And there's this balancing act that we have to do, which is to realize the upside of the technology, the potential impact. We need to be very aware of the downsides as well. And so policy is going to help us do that. And then with the right policy framework in place, we're going to be able to move into impact really cleanly. And we'll conclude this and we'll get right into the policy frameworks that are relevant to you in a second. But I want to share this Gada Ijim quote. So she's the CIO of the Federal Reserve System, extremely important federal agency, right? This is, we task these folks with keeping the money supply safe, to put it really bluntly. And so she says, with AI, the risk of doing nothing can be higher than the risk of innovating, right? And so, especially in a period of great change, we see sometimes the risks of if we move too fast, what might happen. But as we just kind of talked about, there's also a risk in moving too slow. Things start to break. We were not able to stay abreast. And so balancing these two risks essentially is what we're asked to do in leadership in public sector in July 2026. Okay, so that's what we need to do. Let's get into it. So first of all, what is the policy framework? What are the kind of objectives, federal, state, local, what's emerging? What do you need to know? Okay. So first thing we want to just talk about here is as we go through the policy, you'll see this kind of tension or not even tension, the combined set of priorities. We need to protect and we need to enable. And as we go through each layer, you're going to see how each kind of layer of government treats this a little bit differently. So let's start with federal policy. So Washington is setting the tone. And the biggest, most important thing that they've done is release their policy roadmap. They called it America's AI Action Plan. It sets the national AI strategy. And it is unequivocally about driving faster AI adoption in private sector, in public sector, in federal agencies, in government of all sorts. Across the board, this is of extreme importance from the federal government's point of view in driving AI adoption. Yes, it needs to be safe. And we see that in some of the concrete things the federal government is doing. The Office of Management and Budget released a memo last year, just past a year ago, about expanding AI use federally. And it has lots of really great stuff about safety infrastructure, right? We need chief AI officers, we need governance boards, we need risk management frameworks. But the entirety of this memo in this direction was we absolutely need to be driving workforce adoption of AI. And so the federal government, of course, is a massive thing, if you can even call it a single thing. There are doing things like the risk management framework, NIST, the National Institute of Standards. So we as GovAI, we adhere to these as most vendors do. The Department of Labor is doing a lot of studies on upskilling and how we teach AI to the next generation of workers. So there's a big mix here, folks. But by and large, the federal government's emphasis is we need to find ways of enabling public agencies at all levels to use AI there's a real breathlessness. There's a real emphasis and priority placed on this. Yes, of course it needs to be safe, but we need to get this going, if I could summarize very colloquially. Okay, state. So state's a more varied picture because there's been over 1,500 AI bills in state legislatures in 45 states in 2026 alone. Okay, so we're halfway through. We'll probably end over 3,000 bills by the end of the year. And so each state is approaching it differently. Each bill will have a different emphasis on what some particular part of AI, and are they encouraging it? Are they talking about safeguards? I'll just give you a quick sampling. So California, there's an executive order that's coming online. State agencies have to vet AI tools in a very tight way, or a tighter way than before. And this isn't being forced on other public agencies in California yet, but that's probably kind of the next thing that'll come, right? Texas launches Traga system, a policy framework that has a lot of sane and just kind of common sense things that are telling all levels of government in Texas, hey, you can't use AI to manipulate the public, or if you're collecting very sensitive data using AI, you need to tell your residents, stuff like that. Illinois has some interesting laws coming out too on the safety and protect kind of angle. But we also see enable, that end of the spectrum being reflected. So New York State has a AI Pro training program, a successful pilot that's led to this. They're taking it really seriously to get people enabled. North Carolina is doing some high profile things. Florida is very grassroots with this, where teachers and schools are getting together and putting together their own kind of statewide programs. So really interesting kind of mix. And if you want to stay abreast of what's happening in your state, we have two resources there. The NCSL AI Legislation Database is a good one. And then the NASCIO AI Resource Center is great there too, if you just want to hear directly from your state CIOs of what they're doing. But when we think broadly here, folks, the states are squarely in the middle. They are kind of a mix of protect and enable. Now let's talk about the municipal, the local level. So first of all, only about a third of municipalities have a formal AI policy that they've released publicly. There's another 30% or so that are working on one, or that have one, but they haven't publicly disclosed it yet, but staff can use it. And there's a template emerging. So most municipal or local policies, and I'm using municipalities as a shorthand here. Of course, I mean counties and other types of local government and kind of associated agencies too. But most of these policies include things like, hey, you got to comply with existing laws. We got to protect privacy and security. You should verify output before you use it. Things of this nature. Watch for bias. But they're profoundly lacking from our point of view in things that provide a little bit more guidance into how it should actually be used and when it should be used. So things that are missing, like here's what you could use AI for, or what you should use AI for, or what you're encouraged to use AI for. Community engagement's often not mentioned. Measures of how we're actually going to metric and track impact isn't mentioned. And so staff are kind of just left with the downside, right? Of like, hey, here's all the stuff to be careful of. Good luck, right? Municipals are the worst in terms of actually being proactive in their policy documents and in their narrative of encouraging and finding ways of enabling so far. And I think this is partially just a function of what we trust each level of government to do and how the organizations operate. So I'm not here to criticize municipal policy, but this is kind of the landscape. And as we move into how are we actually going to drive impact with AI, I'm going to give the last word to the federal government and their roadmap for this, Winning the Race, America's AI Action Plan. So here's the quote. Today, the bottleneck to harnessing AI's full potential is not necessarily the availability of models, tools, or applications. I took the liberty of adding policy in here, which I think is fair. But essentially, we're saying the bottleneck is not these things. The tech is good enough. The policies exists or is coming online. The tools are there. Okay. Rather, the bottleneck is the limited and slow adoption of AI particularly within large and established organizations. Large and established organizations, first and foremost, mean levels of government and large public sector agencies. And so what the White House is saying here, what the federal government is saying is we need to focus on adoption first and foremost. And that is what is going to unlock the impact, the innovation as we go. So that brings us right into the media section of our time today, which is looking at how we're actually going to drive adoption and impact through platforming and partnership. And those may seem like vague terms. I think by the end of this, you'll understand what we mean by platforming and partnership more concretely. But we're essentially going to go through this 3P roadmap, and we're going to use client examples and data from our client base to really kind of show you how we can go from this policy framework more generally into concrete adoption, which leads to impact. Okay, so the roadmap is relatively simple here, folks. It's essentially policy. We want to establish guardrails. We want to make adoption an explicit priority to the extent that we can. So we're going to assume for the rest of this presentation that you have a policy at your agency. If you don't, contact us. We can give you kind of good kind of standard templates that you can use to develop it. But ideally, let's just take this for granted. Policy exists. You're already subject to policy from federal, from state, from your funding organizations, perhaps. So we're going to kind of take that. So the next thing we're going to do is focus on platforming. And this means a few different things, but most broadly, this means equipping your organization, giving your organization the access and ability to use AI. So you can think of it as equipping. I think that is the right word. And once your organization is equipped, you need to mobilize staff and leaders to use it. And it may seem like a foregone conclusion, like I'm just telling you, it's the most quickly adopted technology of all time. There's all this momentum behind it. Yes, but this is the most interesting aspect of deploying AI in government. There's still a right way to mobilize users and usage, and there's wrong ways. And this has emerged. So we're going to share that. So very simply, folks, we're going to kind of go through platform and partnering. For each one, we're going to give you 2 stories and what we're calling core levers, key things to get right in terms of platforming. And then we'll conclude at the end with some takeaways. So starting into platforming. So we need a way of taking the guardrails that exist in our policy and operationalizing them, as in making them relevant and active for our users as they go. Part of platforming is we need to provide the platforms, the software platforms that give staff access to AI, standardized access. There's a lot that goes into that we'll touch on. That those platforms need access to our organizational knowledge. They need ways that help folks do their daily work with AI, and that platform needs to be ready essentially to get deeper and deeper and deeper. So it's not just about the software platform, folks. It's more that we need a common work surface, if I can use a metaphor, that our staff are going to use and our leaders are going to use, and that we have to get that in place. And so that's what we're going to look at first. So first client story here, really interesting one. Imagine this. So we had an organization on our free tier, a particular user uploaded a particular Excel file that had 7,500 social insurance numbers with all of the other PII in the row too, right? Names, addresses, just a absolute gross violation of what that particular person for sure what their organizational data policies would say. They would say, do not upload huge sets of social security numbers into free tools online, even if they're called GovAI, right? And so, part of our platform is we're scanning for PII, personally identifiable information, and blocking it from reaching AI. So this was caught. But this shows you how folks are rushing forward to use this technology, right? They're saying, hey, this person was so excited to upload this Excel file to have AI help them do whatever work they needed to do with this. They didn't stop to think, oh, I shouldn't put social insurance numbers like this into some random AI platform I found. The enthusiasm is there. That's good. But the safeguard kind of goes out the window. And so City of Sequim, Washington, and the city manager there, Matt, has a really good kind of take on this. And so we've been working with Sequim for a while now. They're on our platform, deploying it. With the staff are on it, doing their daily work. And at the beginning, Matt had this to say. This is from a webinar we did with Matt. AI felt like a no-brainer, but the question was how to utilize it safely. We're running a city. Anything we place in the public domain becomes public. So we needed controls and safe boundaries. But here's where it gets interesting, folks, in the quote. So we want staff to know, hey, it's okay to start using this. It's safe. Because if they don't think it's safe, there's a chilling effect, effectively, which is a really kind of interesting thing here. So staff, if they don't think it's safe, or if they sense that there's all of these risks that they've heard it's risky, they've heard they should need to be careful with data, the policy says that, okay, I don't know, I'm not feeling super confident here. I don't want to make a mistake. So it's not just that we need to make it safe. We absolutely need to make it safe. We need to make it known to be safe. We need the users to see that it's safe, to have evidence that they are in a good place. So I'll show you what this looks like in a second, but let me just share the data first. Every form of PII that we have scanned for is found every single month. And keep in mind, we're doing millions of prompts a month, right? So like when you see something that's like, hey, there's 0.1% of prompts contain VIN numbers, across millions of prompts a month, that's actually a non-trivial amount of sensitive PII that probably is violating that organization's data policy by putting it in to any AI system. So every single form of PII is being found. Every single word I say, almost every single form of PII is being blocked by our platform, right? So this is happening, folks. Well-meaning staff and leaders, actually leaders, the more senior you are as a leader, the more likely you are to be loose with PII, which is a really interesting finding. And not all use cases are equal here. So a lot of PII comes in through summarization, what we call copy and paste, and file use cases. Hey, summarize this file for me, or here's the Excel file. Oops, there was a lot of sensitive data in there I didn't realize. And so every single form has been found. And here's a third-party stat too. It's not just that folks are putting sensitive data in they shouldn't, and we want to make that safe. We want to block it, and we want to educate those users as they do it. That's the real point. But most of the staff don't even understand the policy, right? So the tool that they're going to be using and through platforming needs to be making this real to them. And so I'm going to show you what this looks like in just a second. So this is very quickly here. I'm going to do some examples in our platform. Of course, there's other platforms, and I'm not here to just promote our platform, but I need to give you a concrete example. And we have a great example set for you here. So to make AI safe for government use, there's a huge amount of control that the right kind of platform is going to give you, right? So we're not going to talk about much of this stuff, but safe integrations, safe ways of managing data, and logging in and metricing and all this kind of stuff. But specifically, things around data retention, data shield, which is how we're going to deal with sensitive data, and policy. That's kind of a key area. And so I'll just give you a quick example here, but you kind of need to understand this. So this particular organization, we're pretending we're Leslie Knope from the TV show Parks and Rec from the town of Pawnee. And so Data Shield is going to block PII for us based on our policies. So this client Town of Pawnee set it up this way. You could set it up a different way. Everybody has their own way of thinking and managing PII. The system's flexible enough to handle that. So the real thing that's going to go on here is that as someone comes in and does something relatively innocuous, so something like this. So they're going to ask GovAI, they're going to say, hey, please analyze our records for the purchase date of this van VIN number. And in this particular case, that's blocked. You see this pops up and says, hey, you're not supposed to put this in. And the prompt doesn't even go to AI, doesn't leave the system. And why am I seeing this? So the user is getting educated. Now, you may not care about VIN numbers, or that may not rise to this level. I'm just showing you the example of it blocking. So the user here probably didn't know that this was PII, probably didn't know they shouldn't do this, but the system is making it safe, first of all, and making it known to be safe to the user. So they're like, oh, okay, I'm caught if I go to do something wrong. That's interesting. And it doesn't just have to block folks. I'll give you another example. This is a very common one. Please write an email to the mayor asking if this Home Depot charge on her credit card, which was made on a Saturday, was for city business or accidental personal expense. We've all done this, right? We've accidentally used our work card for a personal thing. Now, this is a credit card number, though. You probably don't want that flowing around. So in this particular case, Data Shield redacts it. So it removed it before it went to even went to AI. And so the AI goes and does the task, and I can open this up in my mail client and send. But the PII was not, first of all, repeated, and was not even handed to the AI underneath. Okay, so all this to say, folks, that this combination of you need to make it safe and you want the user to be learning and like, oh, I shouldn't put credit card debit numbers in here. Okay, that's good to know. And then on the administrative side, you need dashboards. You need to know that when this is happening. So we have things like a risk center that shows them, hey, these are the PII that we're discovering and blocking. Here's Leslie Nope. You know, she's responsible for a few risks in this time period. You may want to talk to her. So it's not just that we need to tell people in the policy. We need to enact the policy and make them understand that, hey, there's stuff running here that's going to help keep you safe. And that's really important. Okay. Second thing on platform is use cases. So I bet you're guilty of this. I'm guilty of this too sometimes. There's a sense of like, I know I've heard that AI can help me do thousands of things. We call them use cases. It can help me write emails. It can help me do that. But I'm still not sure what I would use it for day to day to day. Okay, so this is part of what the platforming your organization is going to help you do. Okay, and it's related to mobilizing too. We're going to touch on that. But just stick with me here. And first of all, I want you to see what the data looks like. Okay, so across 25,000 users, 2 million prompts, this is what by department use of AI in local government looks like. And I say local government, I mean public sector, broader public sector too. State agencies are in here. We have a few federal agencies too. But check this out. So by departments, you have departments in the first column: IT, admin, public safety, comms, right? HR, zoning, finance, legal's here. The purpose, they're using the AI. The prompt gets categorized as it flows through. What was the intent? Like, what was the AI being asked to do? Transform it, create something from scratch, summarize something, code something, explain something, retrieve, and then a specific use case here. And so what this is showing you, this beautiful I always say I want to put this on my wall. This is showing you how AI is used. And again, you may sit there and say, Corry, there's thousands of lines here. Like I'm no closer to understanding this. Well, let me just kind of tease out some of the blocks, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go. But essentially, all of these use cases form a version of creating and transforming things. So creating reports, drafting emails, drafting memos, adjusting presentations, et cetera, retrieving and summarizing information. So this could be, hey, tell me the policy that we have on this, or hey, tell me what the next municipality over, if they have this kind of a program, or hey, summarize city council minutes for me. Researching and inform, same kind of idea. analyzing, and then planning and strategizing, kind of a future look, break down some work, these kinds of things, right? And so what's interesting here, folks, is every single one of these use cases here on the right probably have a department-specific example. So like, what kinds of emails are procurement teams creating with AI? Well, they're creating emails that are things like vendor debriefs or contract award notices, or emails to request legal advice, from corporate counsel. There's not corporate counsel, city council. And so this 120 use cases is relatively general, actually, because each of the 52 departments in the data set have their own version of this, right? GIS in the GIS department is doing a different form of analysis than the zoning department or the HR department is using AI to do analysis. So I'm making the problem worse, aren't I, by sharing this? Because it's like, Corry, you just said, like, the big challenge is there's thousands of things that people can do, and we need to make that concrete for them. And essentially, you're just kind of saying, yeah, there's thousands and thousands, and it's all very particular. But this is where the platform really helps. I'm going to show you this in a minute. And also, folks, the biggest point I want to say is when you have a common platform that people are using and you've made it safe, you unlock and inspire discovery, this magic word. Okay, I want to give you some examples here. So these are quotes from real clients, different size cities. These are all just local governments, but I think these lessons apply. So there's things like Director of Innovation might say, or did say, the best feedback we received is that people appreciated having a safe place to do their work. Safety means they can actually fully engage with it. So this is different than SQUIM, but similar message. It needs to be safe so that they can, engage with it and explore. Let's get concrete. Head nurse at public health. You can't always predict how it's going to help. In this particular case, it's worth the details here. We had a program cut, the lactation program. We lost our lactation consultant, but we were able to use AI to produce guides and checklists for our kind of daily frontline nurses so that we could still help new mothers. So, would you have guessed an AI use case in the public health unit of a local government may have been lactation pamphlet creation? No, right? That is not something that I would have guessed ahead of time. Because what we're actually doing here, folks, is putting something that is powering a transformational shift, right? It's not just like another piece of software people may use or may not. They're really kind of gaining a way of doing a new type of work. And when you do that and you provide a common platform that everybody can use, people get surprised at who actually uses it as well. This is one of my favorite stories. That the administrative assistant who, generally speaking, doesn't get the same kind of accolades as the city mayor, right, or the head of finance. But in this particular case, the admin assistant was the power user, and she was just crushing it. She was driving it. She had great examples. She was just punching so far above her weight. And the director of corporate services said, when I look at these dashboards and reports, I'm always surprised to see who's off and running with it. So the use cases here, folks, it's a feature, not a bug. In my line of work, this is a phrase that's said a fair bit. So it's the confusion of what I can use it for is kind of the point, because you can use it for almost anything. And the core thing is actually not just to show up and say, here's concrete things you can do. We're going to do that in a second. It's to fire the imagination and say the muscle memory that you develop of turning to AI and figuring out how it's going to impact your work. That's the key thing. These guys, top right, are saving, $6K a year, not a huge windfall, but that's $6K a year they're saving because they were able to do their own tracking system using AI. It's really, really interesting, fascinating as you get into it. So let me show you at the platform level what this looks like. And so there's a few ways, right? If you already have use cases in mind, you can come in and just start typing like we are. Write me an email, do whatever. But we're really trying to elevate this two ways. So the first way is we have what are called task templates. And so the point of this is if you do these things all the time, these are really helpful to you. but it's almost more about inspiring what you can do with AI, right? This is the whole idea. And so we'll run a few examples just so you see how these work. But in this case, we have a whole library of them, and we have departmental ones coming really soon too. So are you trying to, brainstorm some things? Are you trying to develop a training plan? A new user doesn't know you can use AI for any of these things, right? So just browsing this library, you're showing them like, which of these things do you have to do today? Do you have some online research you need to do? Do you need to, or do you need a follow-up message for something? And so discovery is just kind of saying, hey, here's examples, but then we want to make it actionable too, right? So yeah, I do have an interview coming up. Okay, let me click that, and then we're going to guide their use. And again, these are the types of interviews AI can help you with. It's actually, it's a focus group I'm running with residents on new park ideas or something. I'm just kind of riffing here, and it's going to be residents and youth, and actually there's usually older adults too. Okay, that's important. So AI is going to take that into account, and my desired outcome is guidance on this particular thing, and I want the questions to focus. So if I'm a new user, I'm discovering the use case, and then I'm having my first few uses, or as many as I want, guided experiences that's teaching me the kinds of things I can use AI for. And then when I hit submit, I'm off to the races. And we'll do a real example next. But essentially, this is the kind of thing that we're trying to drive here. And so generate fundraising and revenue ideas is a good one. So we might say something like, hey, we need a bicycle repair kiosk in the park. I want to know cost recovery strategies. What are the ideas? And let's say I had my revenue generation policy. Well, GovAI would know that anyways. But the person running that now has learned I can use AI to do this. And they're going to run it, and they're going to get a great response back, and they're kind of off to the races that way. And in this particular case, this is a general kind of a task that can impact, but I'm going to show you a more specific task too, a different form of work. And so it's going to give me a great answer there. I'm just going to kind of go ahead of it. But something really specific. Hey, we have a bunch of PDFs that need to be changed, their accessibility standard. You may think this is like way too specific of work, Corey. Give me a break. But hey, if this is my job and I'm doing this, I want to know. And so GovAI is going to help me actually figure out what needs to change in this particular PDF to meet this new standard. And by the way, this new standard, there's consequences if the organization doesn't meet this standard. So again, folks, would you have guessed PDF accessibility, and who in your organization is using that? It may seem so trivial, like Corey, you're telling me that PDF accessibility is a key thing of AI. No, that's not exactly it. I'm trying to teach you that this is almost a magic wand that you can point towards an immense form of work. And the most important thing that we want to do here is to actually train users, inspire them, and get them kind of using it in that particular way. And so the point is not to go with a whole bunch of examples all the time. It's that you want to give them this common platform that they can do this work on. And then it kind of builds from there, folks. So our philosophy and platform, and I think this is the right philosophy, is you move from foundations to general purpose assistance, like we're just looking at. And there's task templates, and there's custom assistance, and there's all this kind of fun stuff that you can get through that. And you get into agentic work, where it's updating systems. But you start at the bottom, safe and sane foundations, get your organization knowledge in there, have staff using it, expose some of these assistants to citizens to answer common questions. Then get really kind of clever with custom assistants. I'll give you a quick example here. So it is remediating this PDF file. It's saying these are the things that need to be changed on it, and taking a relatively complex form of work down into a few seconds. But really quickly here, folks, I'll just show you contract reviewer, right? You could have your legal department set one of these up, and it could do the first pass of contract review. And so I might have a a contract coming in from a vendor, an IT contract, a software contract, and I might say, evaluate against standard terms. So before I even need to bug our lawyer, I can have this custom assistant who's only set up to do this one task, and I could talk to this assistant and go on from here. It's going to evaluate this contract and go with me. So as it does that, I'll just make the point again. The point is the platform, folks. You want to give everybody access, and you want it to help them do their daily work. It has to be safe. It has to be managing data well. But once you're on that kind of cross-platform, that's the second lever, is essentially inspiring the work and giving them that common platform. Okay, so let's look at partnering now. So at this stage, you had your policy. You have a common platform that has the guardrails enacted. It's providing that standardized access. It's doing daily work, including deeper work. Next is, okay, how do we get people who are sitting at their desks to actually really start playing around and using these things? And so there's a bunch of things that we're going to focus on, 2 levers here, and then we'll conclude. First starts with a really interesting story. So one of our clients told me this story at a conference. One of the coolest moments of this particular leader's AI journey was he was sitting in his office, and the fire chief walked in and literally took his hat off and held it and very respectfully said, "People in my department want to start using AI, but I don't know the first thing about AI. Could you please teach me? What do I need to know? Because if my team is going to use it, me as a leader, I need to be using it. I want to be the change agent. I don't want to be last to the party here." And this is such a great story, right? Because it encapsulates this idea that leadership, it's not about age, it's not about seniority necessarily. It's about a willingness to equip our teams and engage with it. And so here's a quote from Nolan, who's the Chief Strategy Officer at City of Olathe. I really love this. Because of this AI initiative, I get to be the teacher, the trusted resource, and help guide other people to become change agents and enablers in the department. So this is so different than a lot of the other initiatives you may be running, right? This really is almost like you're changing hearts and minds, but the heart first, and you're equipping people with this new way of working, and then they're taking it to their teams. And the data shows this in spades, folks. I'll spare you the technical explanation of this chart, but it's showing how correlated a staff member's use of AI is with how often their direct manager is using AI. And effectively what we found is whether or not your C-suite uses AI, let's say you are an individual contributor. If the city manager is using it, it's weakly correlated to whether you use it. Okay, if the director is using it, your director 2 steps up is using it, there's moderate correlation. But if your direct manager is using AI, there is a very strong correlation with you using AI. So what this is telling you is, yeah, we need change agents, we need leadership to be bought in. Most of the time what we think that means is senior leadership needs to be bought in. And that's true. Of course we need senior leadership bought in. But we actually need frontline managers to be the ones using it most of all. And the way that this can actually happen, just really briefly here, is again through the platform layer, but in service of mobilizing the people. So being able to come in here and say, for instance, okay, how are my users by seniority actually using this? I can see a bunch of my managers are doing it, and I could filter this to just show me managers. And I'll kind of save you the drama here, but these 3 managers are all managers in the same department. And we can see that Rafaela is far more using this than Selena is, right? So her team is probably more likely to be using AI too, because this manager is using it. And it's not to beat up on Selena. It's to say something that Rafa is doing is awesome and good. What is she using it for? What can we learn from her? How is her team using it? So this form of insight and being able to see which assistants, which users, which content, all this kind of good stuff, really powers your ability to connect these dots to people. Okay, final thing here, and then we'll conclude. There is one factor that is 1,200% makes it more likely that someone is using AI a year later than not. 1,200%. There's one thing. Okay? This is across 150 clients, all of our data. Check this out. So Bud Ritchie, head of cybersecurity and compliance at City of Harrisonburg, Virginia, is going to kind of tip her hand on this one a little bit. Huge amount of AI investments wasted because we're not focusing on the human element. Okay? So what is actually training staff on how to prompt and what this can be used for? So check this out. This is what the data says. Look at this chart. This is showing user retention across the first 12 months after launching an AI platform. The folks who are onboarded, are 73% of them are still highly active in month 12. The folks who had the least onboarding did nothing. Only 6% of them are active in month 12. So all the folks who are kind of like signing up for free Copilot and just you're hoping that they're going to figure it out or whatever, the data is saying it's pretty rare for these people to really connect and really make this a daily part of their work. Okay, so how do we do that, Corry? Well, these are insights from our Q1 client user group meeting that just happened back in late March. Essentially, it's a combination of a lot of the things that we've been talking about, but it's leadership first approach. It's things like experience exchange events where different people who are having success with AI or have a particular use case, will show it off at a lunch and learn. We actually run departmental roadshows for you, meaning our staff go to finance, to HR, to whatever departments you want to show them examples, to fire the imagination. Here's how other finance departments are using this at similar organizations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Having dedicated champions and managers. And so, folks, this seems like very vague maybe from the outside, but it's really, really clear. The onboarding is crucial to how this is going to happen. So the big conclusion here, folks, is you move from policy to impact by platforming the organization properly and then mobilizing it, focusing on frontline management, first and foremost, using a field-tested onboarding playbook, and that builds staff confidence, fluency, muscle memory, and that's what leads to impact. And so the big kind of takeaways here are policies and on-ramp. I think we've covered that in a lot of detail. That staff adoption, you can make use of those levers, those 4 stories, those 4 examples that we kind of went through. And kind of hidden beneath all of this, folks, is choosing the right AI platform and partner. Because whoever is putting the platform in for you is also the organization usually that's helping you kind of deploy it and get it out there. And you want someone who understands public sector, understands government, and is able to do that for you. So this is essentially the playbook, folks. I think it literally is as simple as if you do the bullet points that are on here, you will end up with impact because the technology is so powerful. But it's crucial that you do those things. In the absence of those bullets, the road is a lot rockier and a lot less safe. Okay, thanks so much, folks. I think we still have some time for Q&A, but appreciate your attention and excited to answer some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Corry. And I mean, that's a lot of information. And as we're going through it, I mean, you got to remember that I'm an old guy. I mean, this is all new to me too. I mean, I like to think that I keep current on it, but it's new to all of us. And it's interesting because the common thread I came up with through your presentation, and it's something that I've heard before, is AI was presented in almost an inverse play to most technology in government. Most technology in government is problem-driven. That we have this thing, we have this new compliance, we have this new task, we have this new expectation from the public. Let's develop a tool to do that. And the analogy that I've kind of used before is, I grew up in the 70s, so the Apollo program. Like, we want to go to the moon. So we're going to build this rocket, and you end up with a Saturn V that's, hundreds of feet tall and this impressive vehicle that takes you there. In the case of AI, it's like, hey, we built this rocket. Where do you want to go? Like we have this amazing tool. What do you want to do with it? And it feels like the biggest challenge, and you brought this up, this is what I thought the recurring theme is, connecting this amazing tool with people and problem. It's the thing is the tool has such broad capability. It's not a niche tool. You're not going to the animal center and saying, hey, this is something you can use to solve an issue with this animal. This is something that every single department has a potential application for. And it's so interesting because, go ahead, Corey. I can tell you're like,
no, yeah. But this is such a great insight, I have to say. I think the way to think about it is the people are the proxy to the problem, right? Like it is not every single staff member across the organization is doing their daily work and is encountering it. And once they realize they have a new type of tool that almost definitely does apply, that's the way that you get it, right? If you have to pick the problems from the outset, and maybe we can spend some time there on specific problems and that area, but this is all about enabling the people to solve these problems at the distributed level.
So let's drill into that for our audience, because that's actually kind of the first point that I want to make. Like, you've got a front row seat with these organizations that are large, small, diverse across the country. And to your point, like, people underestimate the complexity and variety of local government services that are out there. Water districts, power districts, all these different things, parks and rec districts. What are the use cases that you are seeing that are really driving value, where people are having that eureka moment? Like, this solved a huge problem for us. Do you have any detailed examples that you can give us?
Yeah. So it depends on the level of kind of specificity, Darryl, right? I would say, generally speaking, communications is a huge one. And I don't just mean help us write emails like, I don't want to have to type out the email. I mean the kind of the policy-driven, templatized forms of communication. Like, procurement has very prescribed ways that they have to communicate, or when there is a policy or program change, or when there's been a resident complaint, or even communications to city council, internal communications, right? And so I would say that's a really powerful use so far. I'd actually resist being too specific on it. Like, there's face meltingly cool, if I can use the term the kids use, things like turn 10,000 of our handwritten service cards from the 70s into structured data for our GIS system. So GovAI is used to do that.
That's exactly the example that I'm looking at. Is like,
but Darryl, let me finish the thought.
Yeah.
Because I actually think that's an anti-example in a way. Like, it's an example of the power and the depth. But when you think about the impact of that organization did that, they turned 10,000 things into those cards. So it saved a department of people a certain number of hours, and there were some downstream effects of having that data digitized, right? But when you really think about it, it's on the scale of probably a couple hundred hours are saved, and there's a certain value case you can assign to that, right? When you think about something as simple as, hey, every single hiring decision we make is going to be better because we're using AI to prepare interview questions and manage our HR policy appropriately. The impact of that, each individual instance is less, but because it's happening constantly across your organization. So my point is the mundane use cases. I understand it totally. I understand the instinct. There's an instinct to want this super cool stuff. But I'm here to tell you the surprising truth is that AI's ability not to do space age things for people, but to just help them do their daily tasks a little bit better, that's actually where the majority of the value comes because it's so widely distributed.
So, and it's interesting to me because, like, being a government wonk, everybody's coming out of budget process, and budget process in local government is really the ultimate tell as far as demand versus resources. There's not a single department that goes into budget and says, we are overfunded, we are over-resourced, please take some money back and let's give to the other departments and let them get their job done. It is literally a Thunderdome proposition, whether you are a state, whether you're a county, whether you're a city, major metropolitan, small city. It is a fight to the death for resources because you have this backlog of demand. To your point that you made during the slides, it's an ever increasing and exponentially increasing demand from the public because government is a choke point for most operations. For somebody who's trying to get benefits for their children, for supplemental assistance, going to the government is a choke point. They just want to get the food. They just want to feed their kids. This is a thing they have to do. And you can take that and scale that across almost every endeavor right now. And so I see like the biggest challenge in government, if you're looking at it in terms of kind of a broad challenge, it's the backlog of work that we've become normalized to, that government has simply said the backlog simply exists. There's nothing we can do. It takes this long to get your permit. It takes this long to get your kid enrolled in school. It takes this long to apply for a development. That's just the way it is. And I think that's just the way it is has become such a key phrase in government. So
yeah, but Darryl, I think this is a great example. Like you're circling the target with this, right? So how do you solve that? It's not cherry picking problems from the top that you think are going to help, right? Okay, you're going to top down on some very specific form of the permitting thing. Of course, AI will scale into that, right? But by inverting the pyramid, every single person in your organization can be 20% more effective, right? There's no budget to hire an extra head. There's very little budget to even bring new tools on, new consultants on, So really, if you can just make your existing experts, the people that you're trusting to solve these problems, your staff, essentially, if you can help them, and even if all AI does is the trivial work, right? The work that just takes time, that doesn't require the expertise as much. If you can just automate as much of that as possible, it is transformational for the organization. And the final piece is, it's not that you ignore the cool stuff. That's how you get to the cool stuff. So the permitting office starts by having a bunch of stuff automated for them, or just as they're using AI and learning, they're getting better, they're getting more efficient with their jobs. And as they learn AI, they say, hey, if we hooked it up to this system, it could tell me this. Can you guys do that? And so now you're moving up that pyramid of functionality. It's getting more sophisticated. And so you do solve the deep cut problems, but you're doing it from the bottom up by investing in the people and making them more effective at the bottom. So that's the way to get the maximum leverage in our view. Yeah.
And I think that's an excellent closing point on this. We have a bunch of questions that are in here, but I want us to be able to close on a solid message that we can give to, because really our audience are the technology professionals and leaders that are going to be implementing this, and for them to understand the use case, because I think that has been the biggest challenge with this, is phenomenal tool. We understand a bit of what it can do, but not the full capability, but it's how do we drive adoption? How do we see the value in it that everybody needs to see? Because to your point, it's limited resources. If we're going to invest in this, there's something else we're not investing in. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for providing this detailed information. This is invaluable. I went to a digital symposium in LA yesterday. This was front and center. The conversation we just had was the conversation that was repeated over and over and over again. And we're talking about leaders from the city of Los Angeles, county of Los Angeles, all the way down to very small municipalities. It's the ubiquitous challenge of our time right now is we've got this amazing tool. How do we make it valuable to us?
Absolutely. And I thank you for the time, Darryl. I think it's a message of hope fundamentally. This technology can help us so much, can help the average person at every level of the organization do their job better, which means our communities get better. It is it's the time. The time is right. It's a really exciting moment, I think, to witness this almost turn in inflection in public service. So we're honored to be a part of it. Thank you for the opportunity to share, and look forward to more.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And I look forward to having you at our GovIT Leadership Summit and Symposium. That's a chance, if anybody is available to come out to that, that is an opportunity to really do a deep dive and to have some real good conversations on this. GovAI will be there, and we really look forward to, this is just the beginning of the partnership. We look forward to exploring this more with you, because I just do feel like this is watching a wave that's swelling offshore. We have not seen it crest yet. So, yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Corry.
Thanks, Darryl.
Thanks for watching. To explore all of PTI's learning opportunities and resources, visit us at pti.org. For more webinars covering professional development, trends, and insights, head over to PTI's YouTube page.